Ça, c'est la dernière fois que je vais parler en français parce que je n'ai pas les mots en français pour les autres propositions. Mais c'est important pour moi de parler en français quand je peux parce que c'est difficile. Et il y a beaucoup de gens ici qui ne parlent pas anglais comme première langue et c'est difficile pour tous les autres qui viennent d'autres pays qui parlent en français et c'est la chose que je peux faire to be an ally. So for leadership, les commentaires généraux. Ce que nous avons entendu. La présence d'un leadership approprié s'avère vitale pour la mission de l'Église. Ce leadership doit tenir compte des réalités de l'époque et des lieux dans lesquels nous vivons. Certaines personnes avaient de la difficulté à suivre la discussion sur la préparation des étudiants et des étudiantes au ministère. La présence de certaines lacunes quant aux connaissances en inquiétait plusieurs, lesquelles n'étaient pas abordées pendant les sessions d'écoute. Par exemple, la différence entre une attestation d'études et un diplôme. GC43, Affirmation for Leadership in the Church. Ce que nous avons entendu. Les groupes ont affirmé que cette proposition est plus étoffée comparativement à ce qui avait été présenté au 42e Conseil général. Ils ont également affirmé que l'Église doit mener les discussions avec les écoles de théologie et les centres de formation théologique. Certains ont reconnu que les écoles et centres de formation sont responsables de l'élaboration de leurs programmes. Les étudiants et les étudiantes ont la possibilité de choisir l'école et les programmes qui conviennent le mieux à leurs besoins. Dans l'ensemble, les groupes appuyant l'orientation de la proposition et ont émis les commentaires suivants concernant les points numérotés figurant dans la proposition. Certains ont exprimé des réticences concernant la durée des stages ministériels supervisés, fixés à 2 ans, et se demandaient si une certaine flexibilité était possible. Les groupes appuyaient grandement le point 11 concernant l'élargissement de la diversité au sein du corps professoral et dans le contenu des programmes. Certains ont suggéré d'élargir la définition du terme diversité, par exemple LGBTQ2+. Les opinions étaient divergentes concernant le point 13. Certains groupes appuyaient ce point, d'autres suggéraient de le retirer. Certaines questions ont aussi été soulevées concernant la définition de reddition de comptes et la façon dont le personnel ministériel rendrait des comptes au bureau de la vocation en matière de formation continue. Selon certains, la proposition porte surtout la préparation au ministère ordonné et ne traite pas de la formation des agents et des agentes et des agents pastoraux laïcs. Notre amendement, que le 43e Conseil général approuve la proposition GCE6, formation au leadership dans l'Église, et enjoigne la secrétaire générale de mettre en œuvre ces recommandations. Merci.
All right, merci. So we've heard from the facilitation group, and their suggested way forward is that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal GCE6, Formation for Church Leadership, and direct the General Secretary to implement its recommendations. So, clickers out, and you're going to choose 1, 2, or 3 for how we proceed. Please click now. All right, 94% have said you want to go for vote right now. You'll notice that one added up to 99%, so our clickers are listening. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder. Mic 2.
Cheryl McLeod from Bay of Quinte Conference. I move this motion.
And a seconder at mic 1.
Mary Jane Hobden, Bay of Quinte Conference.
Thank you. Clickers ready? If you are in favor of the motion, you will click 1. If you are opposed, you will click 2. Please vote now. And that is approved by 92%. All right, thank you very much. We're next moving on to small and rural small and rural ministries.
Okay. Good morning. We're going to start with the general comments from the groups. What we heard from you, rural ministry is a very important part of the church. It's not just on the prairies. Each rural area has its own characteristics and challenges. Rural ministries keep people together. We need to make a distinction between rural and isolated. There is a difference between the two. There are significant challenges facing these ministries right now. They're at a crisis point, and they have been the heart of the United Church. Economic struggles in communities and financial pressures on communities of faith, rural communities are also facing depopulation. We are losing touch. Ministers often don't live in the community or communities they serve. Small churches are not only rural. There is a need for an alternative model of ministry in smaller churches. Often, the current model of ministry doesn't fit innovative ways of being the church. Now, as we look specifically at BC6, ministry support and supervision, what we heard you say, there is strong agreement with the proposal. Some said that we need to capitalize on the models where things are working successfully already, that we do not always need to reinvent the wheel. Effective models exist in All Native Circle Conference, for example. Several groups said that a handbook would be helpful. One group wondered whether, if the policy and handbook are created, there needs to be a network. One group says there doesn't need to be a staff role. Another group suggested that should be a regional paid accountable staff. There were questions about how some of the resources might be adapted for small urban ministry. One group wondered whether when there is no longer a presbytery, what touchstone for communication will exist. The proposal presupposes the supervising minister is ordered, but it is sometimes the case that a supervising minister is a layperson. It is hard to find people to supervise, becoming a growing demand on ministry leadership. There can be tension when the supervising minister needs to spend significant time with a pastoral charge that is not their own. A minority felt that this is forcing small and rural communities of faith to pay for a service that is required by the manual. On the other side, there is a community of faith paying someone who is not always there. Is remuneration a solution? Would the regions provide resources? Suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm Proposal BC06, Ministry Support and Supervision, and direct the General Secretary to implement.
All right, thank you very much. Before we move to our usual 3 options, I see somebody at the point of order, Mike.
Moderator Ingrid Brown, BC Conference. There are 2 versions on the digital workbook under facilitators reports, and I'm wondering if you can, hi.
Alan.
Thank you, moderator. So there was version 2, which is the one you're doing. Version 1 will disappear in a second. They had updated, because we've been working our discussion groups differently, they made an update, so we updated that. And so we should, and then we updated the status of the first one, so it looked like it was newer than the version 2. So it was version 2 and version 1 is going to disappear, and that's
Thank you.
perfect.
So what was presented is the one we are dealing with. So if what you were reading didn't match what you were hearing, then delete what you were reading and find the other one. So thank you for that. So the suggested way forward that is being proposed is that the 43rd General Council affirm Proposal BC06, Ministry Support and Supervision, and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please indicate 1, 2, or 3 how you want to proceed from here. Go ahead now. All right, then you are ready to proceed immediately to the vote. 92% have said so. So I entertain a mover and a seconder. Mic 1.
Ingrid Brown, BC Conference, I so move.
Thank you. And mic 1 again.
Seconded by Brian Mee, Saskatchewan Conference.
Brian Mee. Thank you. Clickers ready? The proposal is that we affirm Proposal BC06 and direct to the General Secretary to implement. If you're in favor, click 1. Opposed, 2. Please vote now. All right, I hear you saying it's not working. I'm going to ask for the actual vote count that I can't read the number at the top. 309? And is that what we've been getting? 319 is the highest that we've had today, and we're registering 309. Sometimes what's happening with your clickers is the light doesn't change right away because everybody's clicking at the same time. So sometimes you have to click and then just keep an eye on it, and if it turns green at all, it registered. It might just not turn green immediately. If it doesn't turn green after a few seconds, click it again, like you really mean it, and then wait again. But we're hearing that it is clearly passed. We've got 93% have voted in favor, and it did register 309 votes. So thank you very much. That is passed.
So we're moving on to BQ6, alternate relationships and governance structures. General comments, what we heard. There is strong support for the proposal. It would be good to have options and alternatives. Policy/practice needs to catch up with reality. Many communities of faith are having meetings that are not meetings as defined by the manual. Need more guidelines and more flexibility, need structures to locally appropriate governance. Guidelines are better than models, one size doesn't fit all. We should be sharing best practices when bodies are successfully changing governance practices. For example, one group shared about a multiple pastoral charge sharing one ministry and personnel committee. One group suggests to refer to the manual committee for consideration with respect to the ongoing revision and location of the bylaws. The manual committee is already considering guiding principles without defining how they must be met. So our suggested way forward is that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ06, alternate relationships and government structures, and direct the General Secretary to implement.
Thank you very much. So we've heard from the facilitation group. The recommendation is that the 43rd General Council affirm BC06 and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please indicate 1, 2, or 3 how you want to proceed now. All right, you are 96% ready to move directly to a vote. So I see microphone 1. Are you wanting to move in second?
I think we are. Wanda Stride, Bay of Quinte Conference. Morgan Bell will second.
And Morgan Bell, Toronto Conference?
Oh,
No,
Bay of Quinte.
Bay of Quinte. And here I am in Bay of Quinte. Oh, sorry, friends. All right. So, get your clickers ready. We are going to be voting. The motion is that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ06, alternate relationships and governance structures, and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please vote now. %94 have voted in favor, so that is approved. We are moving on.
To MNW01, rural prairie marginalization. What we heard, there was mixed support for this proposal. Small and rural congregations are highly important to the United Church. There was support for consultation with rural advocacy clusters. Clusters are free to be created without input from the National Church. It is up to the region to ensure that there is a balance of representation at the denominational council. The request for exceptions is uncomfortable. It feels like a Band-Aid again instead of a solution. Groups hear this as a cry for help, and there is a lot of anxiety moving to the new 3-court structure. Groups noted that this was a rural issue, not just a prairie rural issue. We need to avoid further isolating rural communities. Rural communities are often not represented in national church programs and committees. There are concerns over the recommendation about creating a backdoor for licensed lay worship leaders to become full-time worship leaders. On the other hand, it is frustrating for rural communities who have access to designated lay ministers from other denominations, or licensed lay worship leaders who are limited by the manual in how often, and how long they can serve in a rural community. Our current period of transition and ambiguity creates an opportunity for us to respond creatively to the needs of the church. Almost all groups noted that we must respond thoughtfully to the circumstances of isolated and rural ministries. Rural life is a culture. The suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council take no further action on this proposal. I should have put MNW1 in there.
Okay, so the suggestion from the facilitation team is that that should read that the 43rd General Council take no further action on proposal MNW01, rural prairie marginalization, rather than just saying this proposal. So we'll let the tech team get that up there. And you're going to get your clickers ready while they're doing that and indicate. Now again, friends, you're not voting for or against the motion. You're voting on whether or not you feel that you have been heard by the facilitation group and are ready to move to a vote. Whether you feel that they've heard you accurately and captured the spirit, but we need to massage the wording, or if they haven't heard you Those are the three options. So please indicate now, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so that did not meet the benchmark of 90%, so we're going to put that one to the side and come back to it later. Thank you.
MNWO2 funding rural ministry. What we heard. There was a strong consensus that we need to find long-term solutions to significant problems facing rural ministries without a will to affirm the proposal. Consider asking the General Secretary to write a policy to support rural ministry. There was some support for the creation of the Rural Ministries Animator to respond to the sense of isolation and urgent needs facing rural congregations. There were many questions about funding, appropriate structures to respond, and whether this is a prairie or a national issue similar to other proposals on small and rural ministry. There is urgent help needed, but the groups raised concerns about how the proposed funding allocation would impact the grants to regions. Revitalization of ministry is the issue, not the money. The proposal needs to go to the regions. So our suggested way forward is that the 43rd General Council direct the General Secretary to encourage the regions to consider this proposal and that the General Council take no further action.
All right, thank you. So you've heard from the facilitation group recommending that the 43rd General Council direct the General Secretary to encourage the regions to consider this proposal and that the General Council take no further action. Please indicate 1, 2, or 3 how you wish to move forward now. All right, so friends, remember, we're going to move it to the side and we're going to check the actual stats on this later. And if that is actually, the real numbers are over 90, we're just going to come back and vote on it. And if they really are under 90, then we're going to have some more discussion. So we're, for now, moving that to the side until we can check those stats. Thank you. It was 89%, by the way, that projected for those who couldn't see.
Mm-hmm. We move on to MNWO4, access to technology for effective communication. What we heard, existing church grants for technology should continue with prioritizing rural congregations with high needs. There was support for the church's role in advocating to government and telecom companies for adequate internet access in all rural communities. All the technology in the world can't overcome connectivity and networking issues. This is a justice issue. This is important because of increased use of technology for mandatory training. This is an issue for equity. There was a suggestion for a church-wide IT strategic plan on the use of technologies in the church. Could be a focused study in each region. Technology is also a concern for urban congregations due to structure and connectivity concerns. The suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal MNW04, access to technology for effective communication, and direct the General Secretary to establish a plan for advocacy for rural connectivity and to implement the proposal.
All right, thank you very much. So friends, this is, get those clickers ready for a 1, 2, 3 vote. That the 43rd General Council affirm proposal MNW04, access to technology for effective communication, and directs the General Secretary to establish a plan for advocacy for rural connectivity and to implement the proposal. You're not voting on the proposal, you're voting on what to do next with it. So please click now. All right, you are ready to move to the vote. So I'm looking for mover and seconder. I see Mike 2 and Mike 1.
George Bott, Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario. I so move.
And Mike.
Tony Orlando, Maritime Conference, second.
All right, it's moved and it's seconded. The proposal is before you, or the motion, sorry, is before you. If you are in favor, you will click 1. If you are opposed, you will click 2. Please vote now. And that passes, a vote of 95% in favor. All right, friends, we have been working hard and faithfully, and I think it's time for a bit of fun. So I'm going to invite people to start making their way to a microphone for a speak out. If you've got something that the court needs. Holy macaroni. Wow, okay, now I'm just going to give you a heads up. Unless people are only talking for 30 seconds, you're not all going to talk, but that's all right. I'm going to give our tech team, it's a 1-minute clock. So your microphone will get cut off after 1 minute. Microphone 1, go.
My name is Ian McGregor, and I'm one of the pilgrims that is going across the country. I wanted to just take this time to thank the United Church for letting us travel as youth. I know our fellow pilgrims are without. We'd love to chat with you about the experiences we've had and talk to you about all the great stuff happening in the United Church. So I just wanted to take this time and say thank you.
Thank you. All right, microphone 2.
The oldest, largest, most diverse and inclusive global interfaith event, the Parliament of World Religions, is coming to Toronto November 1st to 7th at the Metropolitan Toronto Convention Centre. 10,000 people from 80 nations and more than 200 spiritual backgrounds. The theme is the promise of inclusion, the power of love, pursuing global understanding, reconciliation, and change, with more than 500 programs and events with 6 major tracks. You can talk to other people about what this looks like, but just know that the Parliament of World Religions is on its way to Toronto.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Many of you will remember strawberries that were being passed out earlier in the week. No, there were strawberries early in the week, and they were a gift to you from your brothers and sisters in Gaza. They used to be able to produce about 7,000 tons of strawberries every year for export. And what's happened is, because of the blockade that has been put on, as well as the destruction of the infrastructure over the last 10 years, production has fallen to about 1,500 tons. These are some of the untold consequences of war and the effect on our Palestinian brothers and sisters. So when you eat a strawberry this summer, or even a raspberry, think of your brothers and sisters in Gaza.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Tie a yellow ribbon round the old oak tree, or knock 3 times on the ceiling if you want me. Hello, my name is Tony Orlando. And I would like to share a little story. First of all, you need to know my CDs are available for sale at a reasonable price, fresh from Las Vegas, at the Tatamagouche Learning Center in Nova Scotia. Now let me tell you a little something about what that center has done for us as a small rural congregation looking for partners, and how we had a weekend session at the Tatamagouche Center where we networked and spread the word. And lo and behold, it didn't work for us, but it worked for a lot of other people. These learning centers can play a valuable role in networking and clustering too, maybe.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Marjorie Wright and Paul Wright, and we're going to talk to you about the North American Interfaith Network Connect, which is an interfaith event which has been held for over 30 years all over North America, and it's being hosted in Edmonton about 3 days after we get back from here. Short notice, I know, but we wanted you to know what's happening.
So the theme is Pilgrimage, Journeys of Discovery, and the site of Edmonton has been a place where people have gathered for thousands of years, and this year's gathering will involve people from many different faiths from all across North America.
Some really good speakers, including retired Lieutenant General the Honorable Romeo Dallaire and Dr. Marie Wilson, one of the 3 commissioners of the TRC, and so many workshops that I'm going to have trouble making up my mind where to go for a workshop. Paul, you finish?
And while there may not be time to get to this year's NAIN, since it starts right after GC43, we encourage you to look into next year's.
All right, thank you. Microphone 3. We've got this one and one more.
The Royal Canadian Chaplain Service is approximately 230 women and men, religious leaders in the regular force, and almost as many again in the reserves, who provide religious, spiritual, and moral support to members of the Navy, Army, Air Force, and Special Forces and their families, and advice to the chain of command at all levels. Our primary task is to provide a ministry of presence, being with our people, doing what they do, everything except handling firearms, wherever they live and serve, building rapport and trust so that when our people face moments of difficulty in their lives, they will know they can turn to us and we will help them judgment-free, regardless of their religious beliefs or affiliation. We are the only unified interfaith, interservice military chaplaincy in the world. We represent many Christian denominations. We are Jewish and Muslim, and our chaplain general has taken the first step.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
I'm Katie Cox from BC Conference, and I just wanted to proclaim that Naramata Center is open and receiving guests. So Google it and please come.
All right, and because that was only 10 seconds, I'm going to take microphone 2, and I hope you're all together.
Yes, we are. All right, so cool. Navin Forsyth, Grace Tessier, and Hunter Bull from, well, I'm from Manitoba right now, but all soon to be from ANW Conference. So something you may not know is the youth program there is either non-existent or terrible depending on the day of the week. That's a problem and we want to fix that. So if you're from a prairie province or region, and you are interested at all in revitalizing a youth program in places where that program is lacking, come find one of us, especially if you are from Alberta, and provide us your contact information, the name of your church, if you have youth, if you have young adults, children, if you have volunteers who would help, or if you have a space that would be able to use as we try and revitalize the youth ministry in our area, that would be fantastic.
All right, thank you, friends. Woo. All right, well, that was a nice break. Now we're back to business. So we are on the theme administration of sacraments. Didn't expect that. Over to you, Marion.
General comments under administration of sacraments. What we heard. Groups have concern for communities of faith who are not able to participate in sacramental life, and the church needs to provide the sacraments to them. We need contextualized understanding of local ministry needs. There's a shortage of ordained ministers, and that's changing the nature of diaconal ministry. Active and retired diaconal ministers are treated differently. A group identified sacraments as at the core of congregational life, and we need to administer the sacraments with proper training. Several groups felt this theme is coming to us because the one order of ministry Remit 6 failed. Some groups suggested reviewing previous studies, for example, the report that went to GC41, or engaging in a new study on this issue. There is pastoral concern for diaconal ministers, some of whom feel devalued by not being able to administer the sacraments. We allow sacrament elders, but do not always allow diaconal ministers to administer the sacraments. These proposals have implications for our relationship with global and ecumenical partners. So moving to GCE 20, Sacramental license for diaconal ministers, and this refers to diaconal ministers in calls or appointments. General affirmation for the proposal from most groups. One group would be in favor of affirming this proposal because proposal ANW04 would take time and because it requires a remit. Is this a polity question or a policy issue? What about our global ecumenical partners? Why is there no national policy already? Support for a larger conversation. Some groups needed clarification. Agreement because it would only be given when a diaconal minister was in a covenanted call or appointment, as opposed to ANW04, where it would be given at commissioning. Favor a study and remit. One group divided and uncomfortable. One group thought this was the compromise for the church. Suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal GCE 20, Sacramental license for diaconal ministers, and directs the General Secretary to implement.
All right, thank you. Now, my notes that I'm reading are a little different from what was presented. Am I reading what you're all reading, or are you all reading what the facilitation team just read? I'm reading the wrong one this time. Good. I like to model failure for us. So if you read what you heard, good on you. If you read what I read, then we're going to ignore that and just go with what we've heard from the facilitation team. This is what is being proposed, that the suggested way forward is that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal GCE 20, Sacramental license for diaconal ministers, and directs the General Secretary to implement. Please use your clickers to click 1, 2, or 3 to indicate how you would like to proceed now. Okay, but remember, okay, so the awe is about 89% again. But remember, folks, we're just going to place it to the side and we'll check the actual stats. And if it is 90 or above, we'll just go to vote. If it's 89 or lower, we'll have some further conversation. But for now, we're going to move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moderator. I just want to make 2 comments. One, that I will be doing 3 proposals with 1 motion. And so ANW4, ANW10, MNW003 will be treated as, of course, we have 3 different comments, but it's 1 motion. And secondly, we also want you to note that in this motion, there are 2 motions that we had earlier set aside, so please take careful attention with our recommendation in this particular proposal or this particular motion. Okay? Those 2 comments. ANW 4, the granting of the right to administer sacraments to all diaconal minister at the time of their commissioning. What we heard. Groups were mixed in response to this proposal. Some supported, some did not. Sometimes orders of ministry want to be different. Sometimes they want to be the same. They are the same, they are not the same, different training, different processes. We have a need to serve communities who don't have access to the sacraments, but don't see a national policy or strategy to make that happen. The need for consistency across the country. Administration of sacraments is a calling, not a task, and has implications for our relationship with global and ecumenical partners. People in the pews often don't make a distinction between orders of ministry if their minister is ordained or diaconal. Conferences give the license because of the need. There are times when licensing is necessary. Several groups asked for a study on this issue. Several groups noted we are trying to fix a big problem with a Band-Aid. Those were the comments for ANW4. Now, what we heard for ANW10, Sacrament Elders Policy. Some groups were in favor, some were not. The creation of Sacrament Elder was specific to a certain need and time-bound. Questions from groups included, if there is already ministry personnel, why the need for a Sacrament Elder? Why is this needed? How frequently would this be needed, and what other options are available? Would be helpful for busy ministers and for small rural communities of faith. MNWO 03, Sacramental License for Retired Diaconal Ministers. What we heard. One group suggested the court consider using this wording in ANW 04. Need further education about the different streams of ministry. And one group suggested this should be also extended to diaconal ministers retained on the roll. Many groups felt their comments were addressed in response to other proposals. Not prepared to give a license to retired diaconal ministers when we might not give license to active diaconal ministers. While some groups affirmed this proposal, there was a large degree of uncertainty and a wide spectrum of opinion. The suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council direct the General Secretary to conduct a comprehensive study on these issues, including all issues raised in proposals MNWO01 and MNWO02 on rural and small church ministry, and develop a strategy for meeting the ministry needs of all communities of faith, including access to the sacraments, and that the 43rd General Council take no further action on proposals ANW04, ANW10, and MNWO03.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to ask the tech team to leave that wording up there because my computer has kicked me off of the internet and refuses to go back on. So I need this. So you have heard from the facilitation team, and we have the proposal before us that is dealing with ANW4, ANW10, and MNWO03 all together. And they are recommending that the 43rd General Council direct the General Secretary to conduct a comprehensive study of these issues, including all the issues raised in MNWO1 and 2 as well, and develop a strategy for meeting the ministry needs of all communities of faith, including access to the sacraments, and that the 43rd General Council take no further action. So we're not voting on that. We're voting on what to do with that. Are we ready to go to a vote with this wording? Or do we feel like you've been heard, but the wording's not quite right? Or do you believe that you have not been properly heard by the facilitation group? 1, 2, or 3? Please click now. Okay. Oh, maybe I'm okay now. It finally went on. Thank you. It reads 87% have voted 1, so we're putting that to the side. I promise you we'll check the stats, and we're carrying on. Problem is I don't know what we're carrying on with because my computer's still not online. No, it's not that. No, it's not that. It's not that. It's good. No. Sorry, what I need to know is have we finished Sacraments then? We have. Thank you. We are moving on to dominant privilege and intercultural and dominant privilege lenses. That is our next theme that we're going to be working with.
General comments, what we heard. We need to reflect on our responsibility and the role we play and the ways we live this theme out. Appreciate understanding the past, the present, and plan for our future of our being. Some in the church are still not clear on the distinction between multicultural and intercultural. This is not about small percentages, but affects all of us. These lenses are important because they are an opportunity for the privileged to raise this issue. One group questioned, how do we raise these issues at the pastoral charge? Some congregations might not have the capacity to add additional committees. Regions need time to organize themselves. We should not be imposing new structures on the regions. We need to walk the talk. This is the work of Christ's ministry. The Affirm United, s'affirmer ensemble process asks us to do this, to transform your community into one that is radically hospitable to everyone. About the proposal ANW09, racism, racial discrimination, racial justice, and white privilege. What we heard. All groups affirmed the need to respond to this important issue. However, while groups appreciated the intent, they had a variety of opinions on the details of the proposal. Some congregations are not very diverse and can be self-focused, making it difficult to undertake this work at the congregational level. Every community has racism. In addition, groups noted we need to approach interculturalism with respect to classism, ableism, and linguistic diversity. Some people reacted to the title, and it made them feel defensive at the outset. It can be helpful to have extra support for ethnic and migrant leaders who may be alone in ministry in rural contexts. This training could be provided for members of ministry and personnel committees. This is important work in the church. We need to make resources available for use. Mandating the work feels unreasonable. It should be optional. The church needs to continue this work, and one group felt this proposal was an important nudge not to let this work fall off the table while we adjust to the new structure. This proposal may not actually work to dismantle the systems that have created and supported racism. This needs an educational component for individuals who come from dominant culture or privilege. This is not an isolated situation. It exists and persists in the church. The church needs to own its commitment to becoming intercultural so that we can dismantle systems of oppression, not just talk about it. Some groups remarked that the proposal is a way forward, but did not feel that it is the right way forward. Some felt the timing is premature while acknowledging that we can't ignore the issue. We'll support guidelines and principles, but not mandated committees. Not now is not a good thing to be saying to marginalized communities who are suffering. Could explore alternatives like a 12-step guide similar to Holy Manners. Our suggested way forward that the 43rd General Council refer proposal ANW09 to the General Secretary.
All right, thank you. So you've heard the facilitation group's report. You have their proposal, which is that this proposal be referred to the General Secretary. Please indicate using your clickers 1, 2, or 3 how you want to proceed now. All right, you are ready to move directly to a vote. The 92% of you clicked 1. So I am entertaining a mover and a seconder for this motion. I see microphone 1.
Alvin Mabin, Alberta Northwest Conference. I so move.
Thank you. And microphone 3.
Hetty Baker Graff, Toronto Conference.
Tech team got those names? Yeah, I'm seeing, so if you could, if you moved or seconded, could you make sure that the tech team has the spelling of your name? They're just over here. You could write it down on a piece of paper and just have it sent to them. But we now have a motion before us, moved and seconded. We're going directly to the vote. The motion is that the 43rd General Council refer proposal ANW09 to the General Secretary. Please vote now. And that is approved, 94%. We'll continue, thank you.
Proposal BQ3, Equity Monitor. What we heard, mixed support from some groups. Many groups affirmed the proposal. It was unclear to some people which courts the proposal referred to. One group asked, should the General Council add to the demands on staff? Some individuals felt it should be a paid position. A few groups noted it doesn't require a paid staff position. Volunteers can make sure that there are a range of accommodations to ensure that spaces are accessible and needs are met. A set of guidelines could support volunteers taking on this role. All groups affirm the idea of a handbook. The language of equity can be confused with other areas of equality in the church. Why not use the language of accessibility? There is tremendous cost to make things truly accessible. It's not the expectation that all needs will be accommodated, but the conversations need to happen. It might need to be a team so that all needs and concerns can be met. There are exciting existing systems in many places in the church that are already doing this well. Our suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ03, Equity Monitor, and direct the General Secretary to implement.
Thank you. So you've heard from the facilitation group. You have before you their suggested way forward that the Council affirm the proposal and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please use your clickers to indicate 1, 2, or 3 for how you would like to proceed. And we'll just get the 1, 2, 3 slide up. Thank you, and please click now. Thanks so much. All right, 95% have clicked 1, so we're going to go immediately to a vote. I recognize microphone 3.
Judith Evenden, Bay of Quinte Conference, I so move.
And microphone 2.
Sheaves, Bay of Quinte Conference, I second. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion that's moved and seconded. We're going to vote. So if you are in favor, you will click 1. If you are opposed, click 2. Please vote now. And that is approved by 91%. BQ4.
Super. BQ4, descriptive video. What we heard. Groups had generally supportive conversations, and they strongly supported this proposal. They felt that end products should be vetted by the end users, and one group suggested consulting with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. One group mentioned the church made a previous commitment to descriptive video in 2009. The suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ04 descriptive video and direct the General Secretary to implement.
All right, you have the report, you have the recommendation. Please use your clickers to indicate 1, 2, or 3. Now. %, have clicked 1, so we're going to move to a vote. I'm looking for a mover and seconder, microphone 2.
Hamilton Conference, I move.
Can you say your name again? The mic wasn't on.
Jennifer Canning, Hamilton Conference, canning like canning vegetables.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Penny Culberson, Bay of Quinte Conference.
Thank you. So the motion before us is that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ04, descriptive video, and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please use your clickers to vote now. And that has been approved by 94% of the vote. BQ5.
BQ5, integrated accessibility, equitable standards. What we heard, the majority of groups were in favor of this proposal. There are legal standards for accessibility, with Ontario leading the country on this, and existing resources that need to be shared with all in the church, not just staff. Some were concerned about overloading ministry personnel, and some were concerned about overwhelming volunteers, but there's agreement that the church needs to act. Thank you. One group noted it could be difficult if this was mandatory, but also helpful in meeting provincial and federal standards, and generally supported the proposal. There are variations from province to province, and more than one group mentioned the church can lead on this by meeting and exceeding standards. The church needs to consult with people with disabilities in the church, not just those recognized by existing statutes, to ensure our policies are as inclusive as possible. The suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm...
we need to change, there you go. Yeah. 3 o'clock in the morning, folks.
Affirm proposal BQ05, integrated accessibility, equitable standards, and direct the General Secretary to implement.
All right, thank you very much. So you've heard from the facilitation team. You have the proposed way forward. Please use your clickers to indicate 1, 2, or 3 for how to proceed now. And 94% of you clicked 1, and so we will move to a vote, and I'm looking for a mover and seconder. Mike 1.
Robert Goss, Bay of Quinte Conference, I so move.
And Mike 1. Oh, sorry, Mike 3. Mike 3.
Kim Shantz, SHANTZ, from Hamilton Conference. I second that motion.
All right, thank you. So that is moved and seconded. Please get your clickers ready. We're going to vote on the motion that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ05, integrated accessibility, equitable standards, and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please vote now. And that is carried. 94% of the vote. Next.
BQ8, United Church of Canada to work with UNESCO's Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination. What we heard. There was strong support for the proposal. Some were very excited about it. The church will need more information about the named UNESCO program in order to implement. Several groups suggested communities of faith collaborate with their own municipalities. 2 groups suggested this could be added to proposal ANW09. It clarifies some of the ambiguities there. Could it be a starting point for or an implementation strategy on that proposal? One group noted that our new partner denomination, the Disciples of Christ, is already involved in this UNESCO program. Suggested way forward that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ08 and direct the General Secretary to implement.
All right, you've heard the report. You have the recommendation. Please use your clickers to indicate 1, 2, or 3. Click now, please. All right, you are ready to move immediately to a vote. So, mover, Mike 1.
Lorraine Mackenzie Shepherd from Manitoba Northwest Ontario Conference. I so move.
And microphone 2.
Shelley Roberts, Bay of Quinte Conference. I second.
Thank you. Sorry, folks, there's a number of you have gotten up to move or second something, and I haven't seen you till my mouth started flapping, so my apologies for that. But we have a motion before us. It's moved and seconded that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal BQ08 and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please use your clickers to vote now. And that is approved, 86%. I'm reading the percentages, folks, just for your information, because not everybody can actually read those numbers on the screen. So it's just about letting folks know what's happened.
Proposal is GC16, Migrant Church Migration. What we heard. There was strong support for this proposal from most groups, although some were not able to come to a consensus position. One group suggested the General Secretary combine points A and B on implementation because there are many organizations who should be consulted and with which we could partner. One group suggested we need to find out what work is already happening on this with global partners and the need to connect with migrant communities. The appendix was helpful information. The church needs resources to better understand the plight of migrant workers. One group noted they were sure there are already many great resources available, especially from partners. One group suggested including the homeless, adopting Berlin Statement, and developing resources to share. One group expressed that this was a timely, urgent issue, and they would like to see addressed as quickly as possible. Our suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal GC43 PMM and direct the General Secretary to implement.
All right, thank you. We've heard from the facilitation team and we have their recommendation, their proposal. So please indicate how you would like to proceed, 1, 2, or 3. Please click now. And 90% is showing for number 1, and so we are going to move to the vote. I'm looking for a mover and seconder. Microphone 3.
Gay Goen, Alberta Northwest, and I would move that.
And microphone 2.
Rosemary Addison, Hamilton Conference. I would second that.
And you'll make sure that your names and spellings get to the team, please. Thank you. All right. It is moved and seconded that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal GCE16 PMM and direct the General Secretary to implement. Please, if you are in favor, click 1. If you're opposed, click 2. Please vote now. And that is carried with 88%. And I see somebody at the point of order mic.
Madam Moderator, this resolution that we have just passed has some very important principles that we have affirmed. And I see that we're referring it to the General Secretary for implementation. But I'm wondering if there's any way in which the affirmation of those principles can get out to our pastoral charges sooner than waiting for all the work of implementation.
Absolutely. Every single person in this court, I'm hoping, will take back all of the work and the really important pieces that we have affirmed as a council and take those back to your communities, not just your own community of faith, but the communities of faith around you, and lift those up for the whole church and beyond Facebook, lifting those up. And absolutely, that is our commitment as commissioners to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like today must be Nora's favorite day in a triennium because she gets all the work. Thank you, Nora. Our last proposal in this theme is SK5, Living into Transformation, Continuing the Journey as an Intercultural Church. What we heard. All groups affirmed the intent of the proposal. Some groups affirmed the proposal as is. Groups felt that using the language of encouraging the regions was more appropriate than requiring the regions. One group said it seems tokenistic to collect names of people who identify as racialized. Other groups were concerned about privacy aspects of keeping such a list and equity aspects of keeping such a list. One group named support for the idea of including at least one person who identified as racialized on the admissions board, but commented that the number needs to be high enough to achieve collective impact. Newcomer events can be difficult geographically in some regions. Several groups noted it would be good to broaden the language to racialized and marginalized. More than one group suggested this proposal should interface in some way with proposal ANW09. One group noted that the first and third parts of the proposal were already being addressed in the newly revised admissions process. Our suggested way forward, that the General Council refer proposal SK05, Living into Transformation, to the General Secretary.
All right, thank you. Having heard from the facilitation group and seeing their proposed way forward, I ask you to use your clickers to indicate 1, 2, or 3. Please click now. And that is approved. Do-over. That is approved to go to vote. 91%. So, I need a mover and a seconder. Microphone 1.
Alison Playfair, Hamilton Conference, I so move.
And microphone 1 again.
Marie-Claude Banga, I second.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion before us to refer proposal SK05, Living into Transformation, to the General Secretary. Please use your clickers to indicate your vote. Please vote now. And that is carried with 92% of the vote. Friends, it is 12:15. We have completed yet another theme. Our lunch is in 15 minutes. And the business table is telling me to carry on, carry on. So, we've got another 15 minutes. Way to go. Carry on. We are on Remit Implementation. And your lunch is waiting.
You told us clearly that January 2019 is coming, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get quite brilliant. By the way, for people in my age group that didn't quite get it, Carmen had a great time explaining this to me. So, Game of Thrones, winter is coming, for us it's January. But seriously, back to work. One group, the general comments we heard we looked at Remit Implementation, as well as people telling us that January is coming. One group had a lengthy discussion on the complications and importance and challenges of networks and clusters as part of the new structure. So we move into ANW 08, prioritizing clusters and networks. What we heard appreciation for the lifting up of the work. The group supported parts of the proposal, but not all parts. Groups supported the idea of intentional promotion of networks and clusters, saying it may be challenging to expect them to self-initiate. One group noted in their region, recent initiatives have required staff and budget in order to get established. If this is essential, the church must have a plan to resource it, i.e. staff and/or money. Other groups echoed concerns about resourcing. One group noted that there is a distinction between A, establishing a network with financial support, and B, the financial support for the program that a network may deliver. How can General Council provide a strategy without becoming directive? There is a need for the church to support the development of clusters and networks without forcing or imposing them on communities of faith. The purpose of clusters and networks are different. Especially networks may not be the ministry of one region alone. One group questioned it if it was possible for clusters or networks to be ecumenical beyond communities of faith. One comment noted concern in the ANCC about how big things are going to be in the new structure, and if things are to be organic, what happens if the invitation doesn't come? There was recognition that this will take concerted effort from everyone to make clusters and networks work. Some groups expressed concern that it may be too early for this proposal, that we rather should wait to see what develops organically. So our suggested way forward for ANW08, that the 43rd General Council affirm that clusters and networks will be central to living out our faith in the three-council model and essential to a healthy transition to that three-council model. And 2, refer proposal ANW08, prioritizing clusters and networks, to the General Secretary.
All right, thank you very much. Having heard from the facilitation group, both what they heard from you and also their proposed way forward, please use your clickers to indicate 1, 2, or 3, how you would like to proceed now. All right, and you have decided you want to move directly to a vote. So mover and seconder, microphone 2.
Murray Spears, so moved. Spear is like spree, but with R at the end.
I trust the tech team got that. Murray Spears is moving. Is anybody seconding? Oh, now they're running for the mic. Microphone 3.
Cassie from your Carrico, Toronto Conference.
Okay, and you'll get the spelling of your name. Thank you very much. All right, friends, it's moved and seconded that the 43rd General Council affirm that clusters and networks will be central to living out our faith in the three-council model and essential to a healthy transition to the three-council model, and refer proposal ANW08, prioritizing clusters and networks, to the General Secretary. Please use your clickers to vote now. And that is carried with 92% of the vote.
Okay, we're now going to be dealing with BQ1 and HAM1. Maintaining the name General Counsel, maintaining the term General Counsel. What we heard. Many groups dealt with both of these proposals together, so that's why we did as well. About 2/3 of the group supported the proposals. In part, support for the proposals was because the name General Counsel translates better into French. Some folks felt that it was important to have a new name for a new structure, while others wanted to honor our history by keeping with the name General Counsel. Our ecumenical partners know the name as General Counsel. Keeping the name General Counsel is one less change to adjust to. Non-denominational council can be difficult to pronounce. One group commented that it is not worth another remit if one is needed to revert to the name General Counsel. So our suggested way forward is that the 43rd General Council take no further action on proposals BQ1, HAM1.
Okay. So you've heard from the facilitation group, and you have their suggested way forward that we take no further action. Use your clickers now to indicate 1, 2, or 3. go ahead. All right, so we will be discussing that one later. 52% of you clicked 1. All right, we'll come back to that. Thank you. We're going to move on.
Democracy in action. Okay, moving on to GC28, remit-related revisions to the basis of union. What we heard: groups expressed general affirmation for the proposal. It enables the work of transitioning to the three-court model. However, there were several general concerns raised by the groups. One group was concerned about the removal of reference to the sick and elderly as a mission of the church. Many groups commented that the exact changes should have been provided in parallel to facilitate clear understanding of what was changed. One group questioned, what are the ambiguities that require discernment? There was a request for a clear definition about how lay people are elected or appointed to the regional council. There was significant concern over the lack of clarity surrounding changes relating to the definitions of pastoral charge, congregation, and communities of faith, and their relationships to each other and to the regions. One group asked, what is the central unit of the church, pastoral charge or community of faith? In addition to those general comments above, there were the following specific concerns noted, including the word Christ following Jesus in sections 5.3.13, 6.34 bracket 1, and 7.3.1 bracket 1. Revise calls and appointments/covenants to read calls, appointments, and covenants in sections 5.3.4, bracket 1, and 6.3.7. Include, no candidate shall be received by the Office of Vocation unless recommended by a community of faith as section 13.2 and renumber accordingly. 5.3.3 bracket 5, it was suggested to add the care of the poor and the visiting of the sick, see general comment above. 4.1, the members of pastoral charges and congregations shall continue to be members of the United Church. Should this refer to communities of faith? 5.7, church membership. Does this section need to be revisited based on the potential change to the meaning of membership in the proposal from the Theology Committee? 10.0, the order of ministry shall be open to both men and women. Should this not be revised to say all individuals like other sections that had gender references removed? 11.7.2, it was suggested to replace offer of employment with other form of covenant. Having heard your comments, the suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council, 1, refer the proposal to the Executive of General Council, 2, refer the GC43 discussion group notes on proposal GCE08 to the General Secretary for the review and to facilitate further edits, and 3, delegate the authority of the to the Executive General Council to finalize the required edits to the basis of union.
Okay, thank you. So you have the report from the facilitation group and the suggested way forward. Please use your clickers to indicate how you'd like to proceed from here, 1, 2, or 3. All right, the vote was 86% to move immediately to a vote, so we're going to put that one to the side. Business team, I'm looking your way. I've got 1 minute till lunchtime, but we're 2 proposals away from the end of this theme.
Keep going. Let's keep going.
All right, it's your stomachs, folks. Carry on.
Okay, GCE 19. Assessment rate 2019 to 2021. What we heard, all groups agreed with the proposal with the following comments. This proposal is speaking to that which is in the Remit background material for funding a new model. A group said that they were not debating the rate, but how it's implemented. Staff resources were intended to be closer to pastoral charges, but that seems now that the opposite is happening. One group wanted to see a change to 10% increase each of the next 3 years for all pastoral charges. This proposal clarifies what the assessment rate is based on and what the cap process looks like going forward. These are all comments people made. GC42 thought the split would be 60-40 and now it is 50-50. When, how, and why was this changed? One group felt it was necessary to trust the process. A few groups asked who decides if there is an unusual event or transaction. Several groups mentioned that they wanted clarity about who gets assessed. What about a new community of faith like a house church? Will they eventually be assessed? If they don't have a charitable number, can they be assessed? It is suggested that we need to educate the church on how the use of M&S service funds has changed and how the assessments are helping us to respond to the changing funding of all our work. Suggested way forward that the 43rd General Council affirm proposal GCE 19, assessment rate 2019 to 2021, and direct the General Secretary to implement.
All right, friends, you've heard from the facilitation group. You see their proposed way forward, that we affirm the proposal and direct to the General Secretary to implement. Please use your clickers to indicate how you'd like to proceed now. All right, 86% clicked once, so we're going to put that one to the side and come back to it later and move on to MAR 03.
MAR 03, action on the formation of an association of ministers within the new 3-council model. What we heard, there was some support for this proposal, but many groups had mixed feelings about it, and one group named that they did not affirm it. All groups felt support for ministry personnel is important and should continue to be a priority. One group was more specific in suggesting clarification on how ministry personnel will be supported. That clarification, how they will be supported, should happen before the end of presbyteries. A group reflected a concern that ministry personnel are unsure of where their support comes from if a conflict arises within a community of faith in the new structure. Another group appreciated the language of reaffirm the importance of the support for ministry personnel without strict timelines. Some wanted denominational support for such an association. Others thought there should be an organic development. It was noted by one group that the DUCC, the Diaconate for the United Church of Canada, is an association. There were questions about whether or not this would be similar to a union, and concerns about moving towards unionization. One group suggested learning from other groups, for example, the Canadian Armed Forces. One suggestion that came from a group, delay 3 years and see if advocacy develops organically or with the Office of Vocation, rather than setting up a separate support system now. One group felt it was not up to the employer to form an association and recommended taking no action. One group reiterated that the proposal reminds General Council that there is a task force already working on this, as assigned by General Council 42, and that the task group is supposed to report to the General Council Executive. The suggested way forward, that the 43rd General Council refer Proposal MAR03 to the General Council Executive for information.
All right, thank you. You have the report of the facilitation group and their suggested way forward. Please indicate using your clickers how you'd like to proceed from here. 1, 2, or 3 now. All right, 83% indicated you were ready to vote, so we're going to move that one to the side. And in a moment, we're going to go for lunch. But first, are there any? But first, we're going to hear from our hosts.
Good afternoon. We got a few announcements here. Dan and Kirsty Hayward will be celebrating their 30th anniversary this Monday, so we'd like to wish them a happy anniversary. Friends of the World Student Christian Federation and the Student Christian Movement of Canada are meeting for a photo just before lunch. Reminder, please take your side conversations elsewhere so people can focus on their business, please. SVP, if you are planning to take home the Indigenous Peoples poster on your tables, or you're not planning to, sorry, you're not planning to take home the Indigenous Peoples poster on your tables, please bring them to table 10. Christiane, merci.
Some items missing in action. There was a book on the UCW table written by former UCW president, and it was a personal copy of Nancy Sutherland. So if you took the book from the table, please put it back. If you borrowed the trolley for moving the chairs that was over in the corner, please bring it back. If you've lost something, like an umbrella or a couple of other interesting items, they're in a lost and found bin right beside the local arrangements table. Please check that so that Kathy Gradonti doesn't have to drag that stuff around for the next 2 years. If you see on your table there's this nice little basket of candies, please enjoy the candies, but please leave the baskets. At the end of the day, the baskets are gifts for volunteers involved with local arrangements. And there is a book signing today at lunch in the bookstore. And remember, the bookstore closes at 2. They want to take home as little merchandise as possible. So go by. Grace, we did a fun shark jaws grace yesterday. Where are some youth who could help me remember how to do that? Shark Grace, Shark Grace. Come on up to a microphone. We need verbal help. Come on up, come on up.
Perfect way to do it. Only if I'm led in it.
All right, fellow camp counselors can help me. Everyone, you start with your hands above your head. God is good and God is great, and let us thank him for our food. Amen.
Happy eating.